In the heart of the concrete jungle, where the dreams of 1,000 islands come to die, a new king was crowned. Not with gold, but with the weary hopes of the forgotten. His name was Kale, and his voice, a melody of Trinidadian spice and city grit, was a siren song for the lost. He came from the sun-drenched shores of Trinidad, carrying the weight of a past he never spoke of, and landed in a city that was cold in more ways than one. He wasn't a preacher in a pulpit or a politician on a podium. Kale's church was a graffiti-scarred warehouse in a forgotten borough. His congregation a patchwork of immigrants chasing papers. Second-generation kids caught between two worlds, and anyone else the city had chewed up and spat out. He called it the sanctuary. The authorities would later call it something else entirely. Kale's gospel wasn't from a holy book. It was a raw, unfiltered sermon on identity, power, and belonging. He'd stand on a stack of milk crates, a single bare bulb illuminating his face, and he would talk. He'd talk about the lion that lives inside the lamb, about building your own kingdom when the world refuses you a home. His words were fire, and they warmed the cold, lonely souls who gathered to listen. He'd say, "They look at us and see cheap labor. They hear our accents and hear ignorance. They want us to be small, to be grateful for the crumbs they drop from their table. But I tell you, we are not here for crumbs. We are here to bake the whole damn bread." And the crowd would roar, a wave of energy that could shake the very foundations of the building. The sanctuary wasn't just about talk. It became a world unto itself. They pooled their money, running a community kitchen that fed anyone who was hungry, no questions asked. They started their own security patrol. Men and women in black jackets with a simple, stylized lion emblem, who walked the streets and made the neighborhood feel safe in a way the police never had. They created a school in a back room, teaching their children the history the system conveniently forgot. A history of rebellion, of kings and queens who looked like them. To his followers, Kale was a visionary, a modern-day Moses leading his people out of the wilderness of urban decay. He gave them more than food and shelter. He gave them dignity. He gave them a purpose. Young men who were once slinging drugs on corners were now managing the community garden. Women who were invisible cleaners in office buildings were now respected elders, their wisdom sought and valued. Kale saw the royalty in them, and in his reflection, they finally saw it in themselves. But outside the sanctuary, a different story was being told. In the barbershops and West Indian bakeries, whispers turned into arguments. Was Kale a symbol of black pride, a man finally standing up and saying enough? Or was he a dangerous charlatan, a cult leader preying on the vulnerable? Uncle Errol, a respected elder who had been in the city for 50 years, saw him as a disgrace. "This is not how we do things," he'd grumble over a game of dominoes. "He's making a spectacle, reinforcing every negative stereotype they have of us. Loud, aggressive, lawless, he's going to bring trouble down on all of us." But Errol's own nephew, a young man named Tariq, who felt invisible in the sprawling city, saw Kale as a hero. "Uncle, you don't get it," Tariq would argue. "You played by their rules your whole life, and what did it get you? A small flat and a bad back. Kale is showing us another way, our way." This divide sliced through families, friendships, and the entire Caribbean community. You were either with Kale, or you were against him. The city authorities, at first dismissive, began to take notice. The unofficial security patrols, the unsanctioned school, the growing number of people living in and around the warehouse, it all started to look less like a community center and more like a separatist state. Code violations, health and safety concerns, whispers of stockpiled supplies that could be more than just canned goods. The media, smelling blood in the water, descended. They painted Kale with a broad, sensationalist brush. The voodoo king of the slums, cult leaders, urban kingdom. They twisted his words, turning his message of empowerment into a threat of violent uprising. The pressure began to weigh on Kale. The lines in his face deepened. The charismatic fire in his eyes sometimes flickered, replaced by a haunted, paranoid glint. He started demanding more from his followers, more loyalty, more sacrifice. The community kitchen's funds were diverted to fortify the warehouse. The open-door policy became more rigid, with his security team vetting newcomers with suspicion. Was he protecting his flock, or was he building a cage? One rainy night, I sat with him in his small office, a room filled with maps of the city and books on rebellion. The mask of the king had slipped, and I saw just a man, a tired, conflicted man. "They call me a cult leader," he said, his voice a low rumble, softer than I'd ever heard it. "Do you see a cult? I see a family. I see people who were drowning, and I threw them a rope. Is that a sin?" He looked at me, his eyes pleading for an answer I didn't have. Maybe the rope is too tight. Maybe I'm pulling them so hard they can't breathe. In that moment, the line between savior and captor, visionary and zealot, was thinner than a razor's edge. He was a king in a kingdom of outcasts, a sovereign of a nation built on hope and desperation. And as the city's sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer, it became clear that all kingdoms, no matter how righteous, must eventually face a reckoning. The question was, would his kingdom be his people's salvation, or their ruin? And was he their king, or just the first prisoner of his own creation?